first, someone who really does propose cuts that might prevent America from going bankrupt, a senator, Rand Paul of Kentucky. So, Senator, what did you hear and what do you think?
Well, I didn't hear much discussion of the debt. You know, we're borrowing $40,000 a second, and I heard new government programs and blame for the marketplace and blame on the banks, blame on everybody, but I didn't hear him sort of accepting any of the responsibility for 2 million more people are out of work since he came into office.
But maybe it's suicide to say that. I compare Mitch Daniels' speech, which was such a grown-up discussion of arithmetic and how we need to save the safety net, but Obama's much more inspiring.
He can talk the talk. I mean, the question is, can he walk the walk? And I am willing to work with the president if he can come to us. There are some things we might be able to agree to. For example, repatriating capital, bringing money back from overseas and letting corporations pay a lower tax rate. I could agree to that, but he has to decide that he actually really wants to work with us. I think tonight he sounded conciliatory, but I've also been there when he's given his campaign speech and he simply just bashes the rich and bashes successful people. He was a little bit more tempered tonight. We'll see. If he really honestly wants to work with us, we could find some things that we could pass.
And the bashing the rich, I would think, is politically appealing to people. He says we need fairness for all, an economy that works for everyone, not just a wealthy few. Doesn't that, I mean, that sells.
Yeah, I guess one of the things I was curious about, two things that struck me as kind of bizarre is, you know, he wants everybody to stay in school, which is a good idea, but what is he going to do to the 17-year-old? I have a 17-year-old that won't go to school. Is he going to put them in jail? Is he going to put their parents in jail? The other thing I found kind of curious is he wants clean energy for the Defense Department, and all I could picture in my mind when he said that is a windmill on the back of an aircraft carrier. And I'm sure he's not really talking about nuclear reactors. Now, nuclear reactors are clean, and that is how we motor our submarines and our aircraft carriers. So we already have clean energy in the Defense Department, but I think to him, he's picturing windmills on the back of the aircraft carrier.
He certainly wasn't advocating nuclear power. Now, as I introduced you, I did mention you are one of the few politicians who's proposed really serious cuts that might take us from the road to bankruptcy. How did you get these ideas? Did you and your father sit around the breakfast table and discuss cutting government and ending the Fed? What's it like growing up with Congressman Ron Paul?
Well, you know, we all have the argument on nature versus nurture, and I think I was born into a family that believed in individualism, and some it's in your DNA, but I think it's in a lot of Americans' DNA because we are a melting pot, but we're a melting pot that attracted people that wanted to be independent of religious authority, of government authority. We wanted to find our own way, and we are the descendants of those people. And that's what's neat about us. It's not that we have the same color skin, it's that we all had this same desire to come here. So we have Vietnamese folks in my town that are very independent, very individualistic, and they fought to come here, and they're so proud of our country. But what unites us is that pride in the individual, and that if an individual works hard in our country, you can succeed. Tonight, the president wanted to talk about that, but mostly what I've heard from him on the campaign trail is that if you succeed to enough of a degree, really you need to be penalized in some way.
And if this independence and individualism is in our DNA, how come Americans have continually voted for bigger government and your father polls at maybe 15%?
You know, I think this election could end up being a very important debate because the president doesn't really argue for that mobility and for that American dream, and the Republicans have to a certain extent. And I see when that goes back and forth, Americans will choose. Now, about half of America already receives something from government, and half of America doesn't pay an income tax anymore. So we're really getting at that tipping point. But I still think a lot of people believe, and if you ask the general public, do you think if your child studied hard and went to college and maybe got a graduate degree, do you think they could succeed in America? And do you think we live in a meritocracy? I still think most people believe that, whether you're rich or poor, that there is something unique about the American dream that does let us strive and does let us achieve. And I'm still hopeful there's enough of us out there that believe that we won't keep going in the wrong direction.
And what do you mean by that 51% tipping point?
Well, you know, we're at a point where if you get too many people receiving from government and too many people not paying taxes to support it, they don't have skin in the game, and I'm afraid the system may slip away from us. And the president referred to this a couple of times, but he doesn't quite understand or acknowledge that when he says the rich need to pay their fair share, that 10%, the top 10% of wage earners pay 70% of the income tax. So if he wants a more fair and balanced income tax, he's going to have to lower rates dramatically for the upper income folks because they're paying all of the income tax right now.
Well, I didn't see him proposing that, but who knows? Maybe that'll come. Senator Rand Paul, thank you very much. Let's go now.